The YouTube.
On the YouTube.
We look ethereal.
Mhm.
You good with this? Uncle Maat. Uncle Maat Deborah. Uncle Maat Facebook. Uncle Maat YouTube. Duanetta Nini Lisa.
How you got people's names like together. I've never seen that before. They like such and such and together.
It just means they logged on at the same time. Alton Ayana. Alton Ranu. All right. Peru Nefer, Dua Neta for joining us today for our regularly scheduled communion, everyone. It's so good to see you. It's so good to see you all logging in on YouTube and good to see you all logging in on Facebook. Dua Neta for joining us today. We'll get started in just a minute. We're going to begin with our Sunday opening prayer, and then we will go into the roll call, and then we will move into our message for the day. You want to do the prayer? You the whole day. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Amatu Panatir. Salwek tuam Panatir. Audu Aoma Ketiba Heru. The translation is give yourself to Netter daily. Keep yourself for Netter daily. And may tomorrow be as today. We give homage to the Creator, who is like our Father and who is like our Mother, who is everything that we can perceive and everything that we cannot perceive, who is everything and yet is no one thing, who comes to us in the form of the Neteru Ra, who is the light of the heavens, the light of the inner planes, as well as the light of our lives, who shines the light for us on the path of Ma'ati, which is the path of truth, justice, righteousness, and harmonious balance, who comes to us in the form of the light of vitality, giving us the strength and the endurance to live and act upon that which we know to be true. Homage to you, the one who shines in and through us as a beacon of light for those who are blind to the facts of their place, their position, and their responsibility in the divine scheme of things. May we be Ma'akaru, true of thought, word, and deed, to our highest reality, and in the moments of crises and the dark nights of the soul when it appears that everyone and everything else has let us down, so it is, and so shall it be. Everyone say, Amen Ma'at, Ma'akaru.
Ma'akiru.
All right, let's jump into the roll call. I see those numbers going up on YouTube, the numbers going up on Facebook. So where are you guys joining us from? Where y'all at? Let's see where everybody is. Let's go, Tyree. Yes, do our answer. Tyree is in Baltimore. We got Newcastle, Delaware in the building. Yes, yes. We got Philadelphia in the house. Lincoln, Nebraska in the house. Pittsburgh. Oakland by way of Denver, Colorado. Okay, okay. We got travelers in the building. White Plains, New York. Newark, New Jersey, of course. That's where the temple is located. Hyattsville, Maryland, Morocco. Nice. Chiming in from Morocco. I think that might be a first time. We got Trenton in the house. Columbus, Ohio. Greenberg, New York. South Africa. Dua for joining us again. It's so good to see you. Uncle Maat from France. That's what's up. Yes, yes. Love to see it. Brooklyn, New York. Philly, Long Island. Brooklyn, aka the center of the universe. New Rochelle, Spartanburg, South Carolina, Newcastle, Delaware, Becca Nefer. Yes, yes. Oh my goodness, it's so good to see you all. What does that make? 3 continents? We got North America, Europe, and Africa in the building. I love that. 3 continents. All right. We gotta make 6 continents the goal. Watchers from all 6 continents.
Exactly.
We're going to work on that. Dua Nenter, that's what's up. We're so grateful that you guys took occasion to be here with us today. Um, we continue to be challenged by, the confines of these quarantines and this pandemic. But one of the wonderful things that have come from this is just the opportunity to connect with people virtually and do it in a way that we never would have done before. It's just opened our horizons and our opportunities to connect with each other and to extend our spiritual family in a way that was previously unthought of.
Yeah.
Like, so we talked about this is the year of vision. It really was. Like, it expanded our vision. It made us dream and think about the possibilities in a way that we never would have before. So Dua Netta for that. I saw Kilren, Texas in the building also. So shout out. I think that's the first time that we had that city represented. So shout out to you as well. Dua Netta. This is continues to be a blessing for all of us. All right, so we ready? We're gonna just dive right in.
Dive right in.
Okay. So So today, I'm going to talk about the ego a little bit. I've been thinking about this topic for quite some time. I mean, the truth is that this year has been tough for a lot of us in a lot of different ways. And when I think about some of the challenges that we faced, and I think about how we face them, how we overcome them. I think about, what that must mean and what that must do to our sense of self, right? I want to put into context something here that I think is really important, which is that whenever I speak at Communion, I'm always speaking to myself just as much as I'm speaking to everyone else. Right? The things that inspire me to give messages and to share wisdom are the things that I'm working through in my own life. They are the things that I'm meditating on. They are the things that I'm praying about. They are the things that I go to our wisdom teachings to seek wisdom and guidance about. And in my process of seeking wisdom and seeking understanding and bringing a sense of resolution and peace about a subject, I come to a place where I see, something is opened to me that I say to myself, this needs to be shared with everyone. Because if something that I feel that I'm working on for myself, then it becomes clear to me that other people might be working on this also. Other people might be struggling with this. Other people could benefit from this information. Other people could benefit from this insight. I'm the kind of person who I always think to myself, why should I build a new bridge over a river if someone else has come before me and they already built a bridge? Why not learn from their experience? Why not go over the bridge they've already built? Why not allow their experiences, their challenges, and the things that they've learned in that journey teach me, so that things don't have to be so hard for me when I go through it, when I am going over that river, when I am going on my journey? Why not learn from their journey? Why not take the wisdom that their journey can afford to me? So for myself, I look at what's happening around me. I look at the experiences that I'm going through. I look at the challenges that I'm facing. I look at the way that my life has been disrupted. And I say, there's a spiritual lesson here. There's a lesson here. And if this is a bridge that's going to help me over this river, this bridge is going to help other people over the same river. And why should they have to learn the lesson the hard way? I'm just going to, I'll just share it with them. I'll just share it with them so we can all make this journey a little bit easier for all of us. So that's my process. I feel like that context is important because I think sometimes people think that when we are speaking, that we are speaking to you like as though we don't have spiritual lessons that we're learning, right? Like, we know we're still learning. We know we're still growing. We are applying the same teachings to our own lives all the time. So I just think that that's important context. I just wanted to share that because I don't want you all to think that that these messages are like coming down at you. Like, we're just talking to each other. We're just sharing what we know, and we're sharing to make each other better. We're sharing so that each other can grow, and so these messages at Communion, they're for you and they're for everybody. So when you hear them, take it in like it's for you. Take it in like I'm speaking to you. But know that I'm not speaking to you like I'm not beating you up. I'm not hitting you. You understand what I'm saying? Like, this message is for you. It's for everybody. It's for me. It's for everybody. You know? So I take it personally, but I also don't take it personally. And I also think that I want to encourage you guys to think the same way about our communion lessons. Like, take it personally. It's for you personally. But then also don't take it personally, because it's not just about you. So that's a good way for us to start talking about the ego, right? I want to talk about the ego today because everyone has one. And what I come to find when it comes to spiritual growth, when it comes to spirituality, a lot of people talk about the ego in a way that makes the ego sound like it's a bad thing, right? We sort of demonize the ego, and we talk about releasing the ego and getting rid of the ego. And I want to put in context, the ego is not a bad thing. The ego has many different functions, and some of those functions exists actually for your best good, right? Like, for example, the ego is meant to help you assert yourself and help you to define yourself, right? So instinctively and intuitively, you have things that you want, that you need, that you desire, that you dream about, that you have hopes and dreams. And the ego, what the ego does is the ego helps you to rationally determine a plan in which you can get the things that you want. Like a rationally determined the plan to fulfill all of your hopes and all of your dreams. The ego helps you to assert yourself in the world, to speak up for yourself, to fight for what you want, to fight for who you are, to define yourself autonomously, and to be proud to be who you are, to be proud of yourself. The ego is yourself, right? So the ego is the sense of you that says, I am, and I require respect, I require care, I require nurturing, right? That's all part of the ego, functions of the ego. And significantly to this particular dialogue, the ego serves as a means to protect you. The ego seeks to protect your self-identity from harm, right? Because as you define yourself and you assert yourself, I am, right? The ego seeks to protect yourself from anything that's going to conflict with or tear down that sense of self and that sense of I am. So anything that threatens your self-esteem, the ego wants to protect you from that, right? So the ego is not necessarily a bad thing, but the self-protection aspect is the part, when we start talking about spirituality, the self-protection part is the part where we require some context, right? To be able to understand the role that the ego should play, right? Here's the interesting thing. When we come to spirituality, when we seek spiritual guidance, when we seek spiritual health, when we seek spiritual lessons, when we seek divination, when we seek spiritual counseling, what we are seeking is correction. And I get that a lot of us don't think that that's what we're coming to spirituality to get. Part of you probably like, I didn't come for correction. But no. When you seek spirituality, you are seeking correction. Some of the things that people say when they seek spirituality, they say things like, I'm seeking spirituality because I need to vibrate higher. And that's an indication that you know that your vibration right now is too low based on who it is, the potential of what you need to be, right? So what you're saying is you need to correct some behaviors, some choices, and some actions in your life so that you can shift yourself and your life into a higher vibratory state. When you come to spirituality, you might say something like, I need to heal from childhood trauma. And so what that's saying is that there are things that happen to you that you've internalized, not necessarily your fault, but you've internalized them, you've carried them in you and with you, and that you've made choices, you've taken actions, you've done things in your life that are based on trauma, not necessarily based in who you really are. They are coming from a place of trauma. And so now you're seeking to correct that so that you can really identify what part is me and what part is trauma. You come to spirituality and you say, I need to learn to assert myself better in relationships. So what you're saying is that somewhere along the line, you learned to be passive. You learned to dim your light. You learned not to stand up for yourself. And what you're striving to do is unlearn those behaviors and to relearn a proper way of being. You might say, I'm coming to spirituality to understand my gifts of manifestation, my gifts of foresight. I'm coming to spirituality because I need a better relationship with my ancestors. I'm coming to spirituality because I want to live a healthier existence. I'm coming to spirituality because I want to know and I want to live in my higher purpose. I'm coming to spirituality to fulfill my divine destiny. And what you're admitting when you say those things is that you need clarity, you need guidance, and that the path you're on might require some adjusting in order to take you where it is you're trying to go. What you're admitting when you come to spirituality is that you've identified a gap. And that gap is between where you currently are and where it is you want to be. And so what that means is that you're unfinished and you need some work. And so when you come to spirituality, you're coming for adjustment. You're coming to do the work. You're coming to change yourself. You're coming to bring yourself into higher alignment. Where the ego comes into play is that the ego has a difficult time distinguishing between correction and condemnation.
Say that again.
The ego has a difficult time distinguishing between correction and condemnation. So you've come to spirituality to be corrected, but your ego perceives it as condemnation. So let's be clear, what's the difference though between correction and condemnation? Condemnation sounds like you ain't no good. You'll never be no good. You stupid. Why you can't ever get anything right? What's wrong with you? I can't help you. Can't nobody help you. You can't be fixed. You're worthless. I don't even know why I should be bothered with you. You don't even deserve my energy. That's condemnation, right? Correction sounds a little different than that. Correction sounds like, sir, this is the 4th time in 3 weeks that you've come to work and you are wearing clothes that violate our dress code. And as a result of having to write you up 4 times in 3 weeks, we're going to have to let you go. That's a correction. That's not a condemnation. A correction sounds like, ma'am, when you signed up for this class, you committed to honoring the time and space that we set aside for this class. And yet, for the last 3 class sessions, you showed up late. Therefore not honoring the time that we've all committed to. Let's talk about what's going on with you, with your time management, so we can figure out what practices you need to put into place so you don't continue to have this problem. That's a correction, right? A correction sounds like, I like you as a client and I wish that I could keep working with you, but every time you come here, you pronounce my name incorrectly, even though I've asked you multiple times to say my name correctly. And I'm starting to feel like that's disrespectful to me. I'm starting to feel disrespected by your choice not to pronounce my name correctly, or your inability to pronounce my name correctly. So because I don't want to feel disrespected, I'm choosing to end our professional relationship, and I'm no longer going to have you as a client, right? That's not condemnation, that's correction. But again, the ego doesn't always distinguish the difference, because whether it's a correction or a condemnation, the same thing happens, which is that the ego responds within an effort to protect you from what is perceived as harm. Those reactions look like embarrassment, shame, defensiveness, confusion, anger, fear, or even disassociation with the action. Your ego reacts immediately in an attempt to stop you from having to accept the correction as something that you need to internalize. The ego puts that emotion in place as a barrier to stop you from having to accept that correction, even though it's not a condemnation. Like I said, the ego doesn't know the difference. So what's happening in spirituality is that you've come seeking to be made better, and the people around you who you've chosen, right, whether they be spiritual teachers that you've observed and you've selected and you've submitted yourself to for learning, or whether they be a spiritual community that you've joined with and that you've taken pledges with to support one another and to encourage each other's process and journey and spiritual growth, the people who are around you are serving as your mirrors. They are your reflection, and they are reflecting you back to yourself, so that the things that you don't think are a big deal, or you don't notice and you don't see, and these issues that kind of go unseen and unnoticed, or these parts of yourself that you feel like, oh, that's just who I am, I just run late, that's just who I am. And now the community is holding you accountable. Now the mirror is being shown upon you. Let's talk about that for a second, because this is a big misconception when it comes to the mirror of Het Haru. The mirror of Het Haru doesn't show us the things that we like to see. The mirror of Het Haru doesn't tell us that things are good when they're not good. The mirror of Het Haru doesn't make us feel good about ourselves when we are operating from a place of pathology. The mirror of Het Haru is not going to beautify things for us that are ugly. The mirror of Het Haru reflects truth. Because what is true about Het Haru is that beauty and joy is found in Ma'at. So this is not about what is aesthetically pleasing. This is not the ways that we fool ourselves into thinking that we are okay, or it's not so bad, or it's not a big deal. Het Haru operates in truth. Remember, Het Haru is a reflection herself of Sekhmet. And our ancestors called Sekhmet she who hates Isfet and loves Ma'at. So what is true about Het Haru is that when we talk about her as the embodiment of beauty, love, and joy, she is the embodiment of all the good things that are present when we live in Ma'at, when we honor the truth, when we live righteously and honorably and honestly. And so if something is not pleasing to Ma'at, if something is not pleasing to the heart of Ra, then when we turn the mirror on it, we're not going to like what we see so much. I know some of y'all think that everything you do is perfect and beautiful and glorious, and that you live Ma'at all the time and you always get it right. So when that mirror of Het Haru gets shown on you, that's wonderful that you like what you see. But for all the rest of us who sometimes makes mistakes, who sometimes falls short, who sometimes needs correction, When that mirror of Het turns to us, it's going to show us where the shadows and the dark places and the issues lie in our being. So, to that end, I think it's important to talk about something that Nasit said last communion, 2 weeks ago. He shared a quote from our ancestor Ankh Shashanki, and he said, "It is in the development of character that learning succeeds." And we talked about development and what that means. We talked about development as it relates to cultivation, and cultivation as it relates to the concept of love. To remind you guys and to share with those of you who weren't there, we talked about the symbol of love in the Kemetic tradition is symbolized by a plow, and the word for love is mer. And what the plow represents is the need to work as a demonstration of love. The plow represents love as a verb, that it is the things that we do that show us what and who we love. But when we think about that, we're also acknowledging that when we love ourselves, that we are requiring to be developed. But what happens when you dig? What happens when you take that plow and you actually start to dig through the layers and layers and layers of your consciousness? What happens when you start to examine yourself? When you start to examine your choices, when you start to examine your reasons, when you start to examine your past and your present, and you start to think about what you need to do to create your future, you're going to unearth some stuff. You start digging and you're going to unearth some stuff. You're going to find that your ego, in an attempt to protect you, buried some things in your earth. There's some stuff buried there that you thought you was never going to have to deal with again. You thought you was over it. You thought you had healed from it. You thought you could move on. And now you are cultivating yourself. You are submitting yourself for correction. And all of those traumas and all of those issues are laid bare. So when we start thinking about the pain that comes in spirituality, no one causes us pain. Like, the people around us are not intentionally trying to cause us pain. The people around us are reflecting us back to ourselves. And in the process of us being cultivated, it hurts. Remember, we're digging. We're digging, we're cultivating, we're tilling the soil. We then have to face the things that come up as a result of that. We have to face our traumas. We have to face our bad decisions. We have to face our pathologies. We have to be honest about our patterns of behavior. We have to acknowledge our flaws. This is what the journey looks like. This is what we do in an effort to refine ourselves. Because if you claim that you're coming because you want to live in your divine purpose and you want to actualize your divinity and you want to raise your vibration and you want to live in accordance with your higher truth, then you have to refine yourself into a cultivated being into whom divine seeds can be planted and sown. Because if you don't plant divine seeds, then you cannot reap a divine harvest. And if you have not cultivated the soil to be prepared for divine seeds, then you can plant those healthy, honorable, amazing divine seeds into corrupted, sick, and unhealthy soil, and you will get nothing. You will either get no harvest, or the harvest you get will be sickly and poor because you have poor soil. Anyone who is a gardener, anyone who keeps plants, you understand what I'm saying. You have to make sure the soil is correct. You have to make sure that the earth is prepared. You have to make sure that the irrigation is channeled. You have to do the work to open the way for the success that you claim you want. So where the ego comes up as problematic is that the ego stalls this process by trying to make you immune to correction. And when you receive correction, your ego wants you to throw it away. Your ego wants you to ignore it. Your ego wants you to make justifications as to why it's not true and why you don't need to listen and why it's invalid. And therefore, your ego stops you from getting where you're trying to go. Because if you can't keep your ears open to words of right and true, then you can't make progress in your spiritual journey. The reality is that when we receive correction, that's an opportunity for us to transcend that immediate negative response that is felt by the ego. And I want to offer some thoughts here about how it is we do that. Because, again, like what's happening in our bodies, what's happening in our minds, the emotional response that we have when we are being corrected is natural. It's just the first thing that happens. So we as spiritual people, though, we live intentionally. So we don't just act based off of that natural reaction. Our responsibility is to take a step back and to look at the situation and to examine. So as you take a step back and you examine, actually, I'm gonna quote another of our great ancestors, Hmt NTR, and he advised us. He said, "Sleep a night before speaking. For the unrestrained person is like a storm which bursts forth like a flame in a pile of straw." Sleep a night before speaking. That's what I'm advising us all to do. I'm advising us all to, when we receive a correction, to take a step back and to not respond to it right away. And to say, you know what, let me reflect on that. Okay? Because if you don't do that and you allow the ego response to take over, then you'll become like the unrestrained person. And you will burst forth like a flame in a pile of straw, uncontrolled, and willing to burn down anything, burn any bridge, burn the relationship, burn it all down for the sake of your ego. And then later, you got to come back and try to see if you can restore what you burned. Maybe you can, but maybe you can't. And is it worth that risk? So sleep a night before you speak. But don't just sleep. While you're reflecting on it, these are some of the things you can think about. Is the correction that they gave me true? That's the first question to ask. If somebody says to you, you really keep struggling with this thing, and I hope you're really thinking about how it is that I hope you're working on that. If there's anything I can do to help you with working on that, you let me know, because I see you still struggling with this thing that you said you was going to overcome. Is that true? Am I still struggling with this thing? Am I even trying? Am I committed to getting over it? Am I actually working on it? And if I am, if I'm not, is it something that I need to work on? Do I need to reaffirm my commitment to it? Do I need to take some more concerted actions as it relates to this thing? My ego has gotten defensive, and my ego wants me to defend myself to this person who's offered correction. But am I just embarrassed? Am I just feeling a sense of shame? Or are they really being careless with their words and being careless with their approach? Am I looking to find their faults in order to avoid facing my own? That's an important one right there. Because sometimes that's what the ego does. The ego starts being like, you can't tell me nothing because you're not perfect. Like, that's not true. We can all tell each other something because I see you in a way that you don't see yourself. I am serving as your reflection in this moment, so we can all tell each other something. Am I seeking to find your faults in order to avoid facing my own? Some of the other things you can do while you're processing how you feel and how to respond to the correction you've received. You can seek counsel from the wisdom teachings. You can go to the elders. You can go to a priest. And if you do that, if you go to an elder or you go to a priest, tell the whole truth. Tell the whole story. Don't paint that person in a bad light just because you want to see them in a bad light. Be honest. and ask the elder, do you really feel like they were inconsiderate with my feelings? Or do you feel like I'm being overly sensitive and that maybe I need to take their correction into heart? This is also an opportunity for you to pray on it and to meditate on it. Ask your ancestors for clarity. Ask the Netru for clarity. Meditate on it. Try to take your emotions out of it. Use your essential oils to help you take your emotions out of it. Get some peppermint so that you can get some oxygen in your body and get your breathing calm and even. Get some rosemary so that your thinking, your thoughts can be straight and not confused and jumbled. Get some lavender oil so that you can calm yourself down to allow for that thinking to take place. This is an opportunity for you to do those breathing exercises and do that breathing work. And after you've sought counsel and you've meditated on it and you've reflected and you've read the Hosea, you've read the wisdom teachings, and if you really feel that that person should be spoken to about how they talk to you, then yes, you can seek to restore Ma'at with them after you fully sat with it. Or if you realize that they were correct and that your ego response was unjustified, then you can seek to restore Ma'at by thanking them for the correction and by honoring yourself by being committed to correcting your actions. So I want to make clear too, and because I feel like I've alluded to it a couple of times, but I want to make clear that this entire process does not allow the people who are acting as your reflection to be careless with you, right? I'm not absolving them of their responsibility to be careful. I'm not absolving spiritual teachers and their responsibility to be careful with you. I'm not absolving spiritual guides with their responsibility of being careful with you. If we go through the Hosea, we read the wisdom texts, what we find are an abundance of teachings and pieces of ancestral wisdom that encourage leaders and teachers and spiritual guides and priests and priestesses to be careful and to be considerate of the feelings of the people to whom they minister, right? In particular, I want to point to some words from our ancestor Ptah. He tells us, be not silent when it is your duty to speak, but be cautious in your speech, lest you offend. So now there's two parts to that is important. First and foremost, be not silent when it is your duty to speak. When I think about this passage, I think about Hmt Maat, which is a ceremony that we do in the Temple of Anu twice a year. And in that ceremony, we all stand together as a community, right? And we commit ourselves to living in Ma'at. We commit ourselves to those 42 laws. We stand together and we say, I commit to living these truths. I commit to supporting my brothers and sisters in living in these truths. And explicitly, we are saying, I am committing to be held accountable to these truths. And if fault is found, I am committed to allowing you to point out the fault. And if I see where you're faltering, I am committed to helping you to realize where you're faltering and falling short and assisting you with being better. So it is my duty then, as your committed sister, right, to speak when I see you falling short. It is my duty then, as a committed person in your community, to not allow you to fall short over and over and over when I know that you are committed to being the best and highest version of yourself. And when I know that I have committed to assisting you and supporting you and uplifting you in that journey. I cannot be silent. It is my duty to speak. That is what Ptah tells us. But Ptah also tells us to be cautious in our speech, lest we offend. And that's true too. But remember, the ego responds to correction and condemnation equally. So that's why I'm encouraging us to think about what was said to us and really process it and make sure we're being fair about whether or not it is a correction or a condemnation. Because in some cases, in our minds, in our hearts, in our bodies, we are receiving corrections as if they're condemnations. And that's not fair to the person who gave you the correction. And it's also not okay for them to condemn you in an effort to correct you. You have the right to seek restitution if that has actually happened. Okay? But the truth of the matter is that I think what's really important and key to this whole discussion is that the concept of cultivation is the entire context, of the idea of cultivation is love. That's the whole context. The whole context is that I love you enough to not let you abandon your principles. I love you enough to not allow you to abandon your goals. I love you enough to hold you accountable to your potential. I love you enough to accept playing a role in your life and in your evolution. I love you enough to allow you to play a role in my life and in my evolution. I love you enough to want you to be a part of helping me be my best self. And you love yourself enough also. You love who you are, but you also know what you're capable of. You also know that there is much more potential available to you, and you love yourself enough not to allow yourself to settle when the possibility of your greatness is right there available to you for the taking. That is what cultivation is about. That is what the corrections are about. At the end of it all this is about is a conversation about love and how we love. Somebody said, it might have been you who said it, but I saw it in the chat, that work is love made visible. That's all that this is about. It is about how it is that we commit ourselves to refining and perfecting our character, our behaviors, and our choices to demonstrate that we love ourselves, we love the divinity that exists within us, and we love the people around us in our community. I saw a quote on Facebook. I don't know who said it, but it said, maybe the journey isn't about becoming anything. Maybe the journey is about unbecoming everything that isn't really you, so that you can be who you were meant to be in the first place. Maybe the journey is about unbecoming everything that isn't really you, so you can be who you were meant to be in the first place. Your trauma and your pathologies, your behavioral patterns, your poor decisions, your bad habits, your past, that is not who you are. Those are the things that you've experienced. And you've created these walls and these barriers to protect yourself as a result of those experiences. But we were never supposed to become these things. We were never supposed to live ourselves through our traumas and our pathologies. We were never supposed to choose through trauma and decide through trauma and act out of trauma. So the process of unbecoming is a journey of unpacking and unearthing and deconstructing and taking our entire selves apart. It is a process of revealing the raw materials that can show us the real potential and the true power that has existed in each and every one of us this entire time. And all of our potential and all of our power has been covered up and packed away underneath layers and layers and layers of crap. And so the pain that we feel when it comes time to tear apart those layers, to tear apart ourselves in order that we can unbecome ourselves and realize our true selves, our divine selves, our true nature. Yeah, that's gonna hurt. But remember, we don't become divine. We already are divine. But we do have to do the work to realize our divinity. You do have to do the work to actualize your potential. You cannot speak about potential that you have and then never do anything with it. It's like not having it at all. We do have to do that work, no matter how much it hurts, no matter how painful it feels, no matter how uncomfortable it is. We have to tell our egos to step aside. We have to learn how to distinguish between when we are really in danger and when we are really in harm and when we are just uncomfortable by the process of growth. So what this whole journey is requiring us to do is to heal. And if we take the pain that comes from a correction and we ignore it and we pack it away, we're doing nothing but continuing to corrupt ourselves and our soil so that we cannot be planted, so that healthy seeds and divine seeds cannot be planted within us. If we continue to through that pattern of ignoring the things that are uncomfortable and turning our backs on the things that we don't like and not listening when someone tries to correct us and being unwilling to hear, then all we're continuing to do is to harm ourselves even more in the long run. That's what we're doing. And we will never in that way realize the power that's meant for us, the power that's already ours when we're ready to take it. If you're ready to live yourself into your potential, if you're ready to realize your power, if you're ready to become who you are always meant to be, then you must commit yourself to unbecoming. You must commit yourself to deconstruction. You must commit to being cultivated. You must do the work. And you must be willing to allow the people who love you to support you in that work, even and especially when it is most uncomfortable for you. That's it. That's what I wanted to talk about today.
Mic drop.
Hmt NTR, everyone. I appreciate you all listening and sharing this space with us today. What do you want to do? Do you want to look at the comments?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was worth at least $5.
Yeah. Yes, Hmt NTR. I
At least a
appreciate
$5
that.
donation.
I appreciate that. If I will say, if anyone is able and willing to give a donation to the work that we're doing, it would be most appreciated. We do appreciate all the support that you all give us, your presence and your energy, as well as the donations that allow us to continue doing the work that we do. We are receiving donations via Cash App. The handle on Cash App is $Temple of Anu. You also can send a donation on PayPal using templeofanu@gmail.com. And again, we greatly appreciate your support.
I think they were just affirming. You can check that.
Yeah. Yeah. Debbie, I want to just say I greatly appreciate those questions, because those questions, could you have done that differently? What other way could you have handled that? Those things definitely help as far as the person who's offering the correction to ask the person who's receiving the correction to think about their choices and think about their actions and think about what they could do to improve themselves. And of course, if someone struggles with those answers, that's where spiritual guides come in, and elders, priests, priestesses, and also again, the brothers and sisters in your community who are here to support and love you. Absolutely. Yeah. say, would you say that the ego is an aspect of the soul or an expression of the soul? I would say that the ego is an expression, because the ego is an expression of again, it's an expression of the self, of the I am principle, right? So the ego itself is not the soul, but it is an expression of the soul. Okay. Do you want to add to that? But dua again for everyone's comments, for all of your energy and your support, and for being here with us today. Yeah. Dua everyone. All right, we're gonna close out then, and we will see you all here again in 2 weeks for our regularly scheduled communion at 1:00 p.m. Both dual cast on YouTube and Facebook Live. Again, we appreciate your energy, your donations, and your support. And we'll talk soon. Shemi Mateh.
Shemi Mateh.